Welcome to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast. And you're very welcome back to the Hawkeye Sidekick Hurling podcast with your host Mark Kennedy. Joined again this week by Ruairi, Walsh and Kieran. Lads, how are things?
Hi Mark.
Very good, Mark.
Good now. Leading into St. Patrick's Day. So, podcast today will review round 4 of the Allianz Hurling League, look at round 5 for this weekend, and also the Croke Cup final with Presentation Athenry taking on the juggernaut that is St. Kieran CBS. I suppose, guys, we'll start off with 1A in round 4. I suppose start off on Saturday night last here, guys. Tipperary and Walsh played a pretty feisty affair in Thurles. I suppose, Ruairi, what was your impressions of the game?
Yeah, well, first of all, it was the game of the league up until the sending off. There was a real bite to it. No love lost there, as we could see, and we thought as much with the managers involved that Davy Fitz wouldn't want to lose to his predecessor in a game of that and maybe set down the marker for the championship. So yeah, there was a real edge to it, which is what we all want to see and what had been missing throughout the league. And it was a quality game as a result, and it was on a knife edge until that moment where Tip got that goal and JB Byrne was sent off within 10 seconds of the ball hitting the back of the net. So no, we didn't see the incident. Davy Fitz in the interview afterwards said, it was a straight red card. So, if Davy is saying that, it must have been straight red. But look, it did turn the game, because you would have thought at the time, the way the game had been going, Waterford had setbacks earlier in the game. They conceded goals and responded well. That if they hadn't gone down to 14 at that minute and they got the next point or two, we could have been in for the rip-roaring finish the game was promising all along. As a result, Tip pulled away in the end. There was a real intensity about Tip that was lacking last year. I don't know if you noticed that. There was, especially the whole swarming tackle, which had been lacking from them. And they did it to very good effect defensively a few times. Noel McGrath, for example, as well, a player we wouldn't normally associate with, the grafting part of the game and all that. He made some serious tackles and turnovers for Tip and led the line that way. I suppose when younger players are seen, like Bonner, who has done it all his career, but then seen the likes of Noel putting in a shift like that, it really, it does inspire the newer lads coming in. Just as we mentioned earlier, actually, beforehand, Seamus Callanan picking up an injury is another blow for Tip, considering things were beginning to click for them and they were looking, well going into championship. But look, overall, they have to be happy where they are. Liam Cahill had a situation where I think he had to get as many league games as possible to see exactly what he had and try and mix the newer talent coming through with the seasoned players. So look, they are in a good place at the minute, and for a team to finish bottom of the group last year in Munster, they seem to be in a far better place going into the championship this year.
Indeed, Rory. Kieran, get you in there. Your thoughts on the game in Thurles?
Yeah, it's probably, of all the league games to date, it was probably the most fast-paced and high-intensity game we've seen. I suppose looking at Waterford first, probably worrying parts for me, there was a period in the first half where they went 20 minutes without scoring. To be a concern, especially when they're playing with the wind. I think Ozzie Gleeson, looking back at it now, he didn't look to be on it on the day and was, taken off. I think it was a hamstring injury, so that they'll be sweating on the fitness of him, because he'll be pivotal to Waterford in the championship. Tipperary, yeah, they've, as Rory said, they've attacked the league, and I think Cahill had to do it, tactically get game time into guys, plenty of new guys. I think you'd be looking at Brian O'Mara, really impressive fullback. The more it goes on, you're probably thinking that's the way he'll line out for championship. Great day for Jake Morris, 3 goals. We've kind of questioned his consistency before, so hopefully he can keep building on that. Grow O'Connor again, another great 9 points, 8 from frees. Really, really big find for them, I think, this year. I think as well, Tipperary, they're playing a high possession game, and I think one area they have really targeted is puckouts, and they won 32 of their own 38 puckouts, so 84% puckouts retained, which is I think it's a huge number, and I think that's the way the game has gone. You retain your puckout, retain possession and work from there. I think you compare it to Waterford's, where they only won 16 out of 33, which is 48%. So, another number that might worry, Davy going into the championship. I think for Tipperary, another thing you can point out, there was no love lost between the two teams, and Tipperary could see the 16 frees to Waterford's 9, and you add a little bit more intensity, and once championship rolls around, and 16 frees, you're kind of thinking some of them could turn potentially into yellows or reds, depending on the situation. So think it's something to be looking at. But yeah, I think from Tipperary point of view, 4-4, I can't have any complaints into a league semi-final. Obviously they have their injury concerns, but I think they've been impressive to date.
I think from Waterford perspective, the injuries that they picked up, particularly Conor Prunty at full back and Austin Gleeson in midfield, their 2 hamstring injuries, could be a bit of a anxious wait for those 2 players to see if they can be right for the Munster Hurling Championship. But I think from Waterford perspective, just how Tip carved out goal scoring opportunities against them. I counted at least 7 goal scoring opportunities, 4 being scored, obviously, 3 being missed. But I suppose for Davy Fitz, who loves his sweeper system, I think maybe more evidence that he may have to maybe deploy that here, Ruairi come Championship.
Yeah, and second half he definitely set the Burka a lot deeper. Started the second half, but what was worrying for me for Waterford point of view was actually, you're on about they gave up goal chances, but at the other end the forwards were like misfiring. They were relying on midfield for a lot of scores. Jamie Byrne chipped in, I think, with 2 or 3 from play. Callum Lyons definitely got 4 points from play. That's coming from your midfield area. There's the forwards inside, like Shane Bennett seemed to, when he's in possession, just running down blind alleys with it, not quite knowing what his end product would be. And Waterford a few times did that. There was actually a couple of times where there was points on and they just ran the ball straight into traffic. So look, a few things for them to learn on as well. Jake Prendergast was guilty of a couple of those, kind of soloing in and eventually just losing possession. When a goal scoring opportunity wasn't done. Saying that as well, Waterford had their 2 goal chances start to the second half, albeit at kind of tighter angles, but didn't hit the target with either of them. And you're just wondering there, when Waterford were on top, had they thrown a goal in as well with it during that period? It could really have stood to them in the end. But seeing Desi Hutchison back so deep as well was a bit baffling, because if you even watched back Waterford's performances in Munster Championship last year, the one consistent factor was Desi inside was just torturing a lot of defenders. Like Rory Hayes, it was his turning point in the championship, because Rory Hayes, everyone was talking about him for an all-star. Then up in Ennis, when Clare won so heavily, he got roasted by Desi that night for, I think it was 1-6 or something, or that afternoon. But and that was probably a turning point for Rory Hayes' championship. But he was the one consistent star inside, and you're kind of thinking, Davy, you're looking at Mikey Kiley and Desi as your 2 inside, and the fact Desi was playing so far deep was worrying, I'd say, if you were a Waterford fan, and definitely seeing the lack of scores coming from the inside forward line.
Absolutely. Kieran, get you in there.
Yeah, and like it is league, and there is weeks where you're expecting teams not to be at the races, but as Rory pointed, you can be not at the races, but you still expect to close down lines running defensively. And there was at least 6-7 goal chance for Tipperary. I think on the other hand, Tipperary are looking for goals. It's part of, I think, Cahill's game plan. We saw about Waterford as well last year. They're a team, I think Cork are probably another team that are, on the hunt for goals at any opportunity. And, defensively you have to be up to scratch playing against the likes of these teams, because any sniff of a goal chance and they're going to go for it. Yeah, look, I think for me, I have a lot of question marks for Waterford still. I think looking at the league games, they kind of eat into the league with the earlier fixtures with due respect to other teams. I think there's a lot of question marks, as I say, if you're going into battle in the championship first game against Limerick without maybe Prunty or Ozzy Gleeson, like they're big shoes to fill, especially Prunty at full back and Gleeson for what he brings as well. So I think they'll be sweating on them 2 guys getting back in. And I think Waterford will be going into the championship with question marks. I think if compared to Tipperary, where, we all know where Tipperary are at, maybe it'll be a complete different, it might be a false dawn once championship starts. And I think Tipperary might lack a bit of depth, especially with the injuries they had. But comparing the 2 teams, I have serious question marks for Waterford going into the championship. Now, maybe Davy is fooling us all and keeping the powder dry, but, I suppose time will tell maybe.
No, saying that though, I suppose that turning point in the game was crucial, and if it hadn't happened, Waterford could have maybe gone on one, and we might be, as just the way they fizzled out, I suppose. But a lot of things misfiring for them as well. As we said, look, defensively, you can't give up that many chances, and at the other end, you have to have a threat inside, and they didn't have that. Now, the other thing, if you're a Waterford fan, something that might, cause you a bit of anxiousness was, I've seen Davy say in a few interviews, this is going to be 2 or 3 years. Waterford were in the All-Ireland final 2 years ago. They were in the semi-final 2 years ago. They're in the final year before that. So if you're a Waterford fan hearing that, it's going to take 2 or 3 years, that, I know maybe he's trying to take the pressure off the team or buy himself some time in the job as well. But Waterford really should be, if if Limerick don't win the All-Ireland this year, it's wide open between 5 or 6 teams, and Waterford have to see themselves as contenders in that light. I don't know, to hear the manager saying it'll be 2 or 3 years before they're contenders is, considering Derek McGrath was expecting them to walk up the steps last year, it's some fall in 12 months,
I would agree, Rory. I think Waterford, they have a group of players, and they did last year, and some of the players are approaching, the wrong sides of the age profile to play. Ozzy Gleeson's not getting any younger. Ty DeBurka, I think now is the time. If they're going to win on Ireland, I think it has to be this year. I think it's a case of Davy is trying to maybe take some pressure off himself already, because the players are there. I think if they don't do it this year, they won't do it.
And not having a home venue is huge in Munster. So Clare, having to play Clare and Thurles, where Clare have been going so well in Thurles is a massive negative for Waterford, as opposed to maybe taking them down to Walsh Park or even down to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So look, it's got to be tough for them, no mistake about it. But still, if they have everyone and they're firing, you wouldn't put them out of getting qualifying either. That's how tight Munster is. Win your first game and you have a great chance then after that. But yeah, it's just signs aren't promising really. It's hard to, last year people were a lot more confident about how Waterford were going to go in the championship and completely backfired. Maybe this year the opposite way might help them, but it's hard to see positive signs.
Definitely, because it doesn't get any easier for Waterford. Travel to Nolan Park this weekend to face Kilkenny. I suppose we'll get more evidence there in terms of squad depth. Particularly, you'd assume that Austin Gleeson and Conor Prunty will be out. Not sure in terms of the status of Mikey Kiley here, but that's an insightful forward threat given his UL exploits in the Fitzgibbon Cup. So, there's still opportunity for improvement there from Waterford, certainly. But I suppose for Tipperary, 4-4 in the league, they travel to Corrigan Park at the weekend to face Antrim. It seems to be going extremely well for Liam Cal, but I think that Seamus Cannon injury, if he's not fit in Munster Senior Hurling Championship, an over-reliance again on Jason Ford when he came off the bench, 6 points off the bench again. It really is kind of maybe raising a few question marks again on that depth chart here, Rory, for Tipperary heading into that championship.
Yeah, and Callan is a player who traditionally gets going, needs a few games of the league and gets stronger and stronger. And I'm sure that's what Cahill had in mind, that he'd be hitting peak championship by the first round against Clare, peak fitness and peak sharpness. But yeah, look, I suppose he can only deal with the hand he's been dealt, and at the moment he's down players. He luckily for Tipperary point of view, he does know the talent around that age group, 21-22, after being over the underage teams a couple of years ago. So he does know what's out there more so than a lot of other guys, than an outside manager coming in, let's say. But yeah, look, it's tough for them going down. But the fact that I think momentum is the other thing they have in their favour, though, to kind of counter the injuries. And they have serious momentum now. And even going up to Antrim, being able to, he can have a look at a few players now because they're through either way. So he can go up there and it just gives them, another positive going into to counter some of the injuries. But I agree with you, Callan is going to be a big loss for them. A fit Callan inside and full forward Munster Championship is a threat to any team. Just that split second and he can have the ball stuck in the net. Mind wanders for a second and it's in there, as Clare found out up in Ennis there a few years ago. So that's the threat he has, serious goal threat, and it is another big blow. And when it comes to round robin of 4 intense games back to back, or with very little gaps in between, 4 games in 5 weeks, you do need as many top quality players fit as you can. And Tipperary definitely seem to be on the unfortunate side of injuries more so than any county in Munster at the minute. I
think it'll be an interesting watch with Tipperary this year because the squad depth definitely was exposed during the Munster Senior Hurling Championship last year, with players not really performing on various weekends. So look, it'll be an interesting watch. It's been a good start to Liam Call's tenure here. But more to follow, I suppose, next weekend. I suppose we can switch to Cusack Park, Ennis. Rory, you were there watching the Western Out Classical between Clare and Galway. I thought this was just a strange game from start to finish. Clare came out of the trap so well. And then Galway kind of grew into the game and won by 5 points. I suppose, what were your thoughts?
It was more like El Challenge-a-co at stages, wasn't it? Normally people say a game of 2 halves. You had the first 10 minutes and then you had the other 60 minutes. Yeah, I suppose one major factor in it was Galway's half-forward line, just got the better. They won that battle with Clare's half-back line. Keeper could go long whenever he felt like it. And Conor Cooney, who I've often questioned here for consistency as well, just had an unbelievable game for him. Just winning ball and striking under pressure. Like his ability to just score like off the back foot under pressure from 60, 70 yards out. Like Clare, like you're looking again, Tony Kelly was really quiet in the game. Just a lot of kind of worrying signs, because I know you're kind of saying like, were Clare fully up for it? I don't know. I think a home game against Galway, big crowd in the ground, they should have been up for it. Like, and you can't just kind of go through the league. I know they're saying, oh, Clare targeted the Wexford game, but they didn't get any fight back from Wexford. You have to like the game was in the melting pot there, and Clare didn't really up it or seize it or anything like that. And that was a slight worry for me. More so was their error count, like the amount of unforced errors, especially in the backs. Crossfield ball across the back line that should be going to hand or should be sticking, and suddenly there was lads fumbling on the ball and being turned over. That was really worrying, like, and that's something that, you know, you're kind of saying 5 or 6 weeks have to fix that, especially like going to the Munster Championship, fumbling the ball in the back line, you're going to be in serious trouble. So yeah, look, from a Clare point of view, it was worrying, and we're talking about goal threats or whatever. Like Clare didn't really have, you know, much of a threat at all inside. When Ian Galvin came in, all right, he looked lively in the last few minutes. Dave Reedy had one chance, all right, that he kind of blazed over the bar. But other than that, like, we didn't really create a goal chance. So yeah, look, I was expecting a bit more out of Clare, to be honest, and I thought the game was going to be a lot more intense, especially after watching the match the night before. I was psyched going into Cusack Park, looking forward to a big match, but look, left disappointed going out. And even had Clare kind of snuck a win by a point or two, just the whole kind of game lacked any intensity. The crowd lacked any intensity. So yeah, definitely had a El Challenge-a-co feel about it.
Kieran, get you in there. What was your reaction to the Galway win?
Yeah, Clare started really strong. You said like 8 points to 1 up after 14, 15 minutes. But I think Galway deployed Conor Cooney back, kind of extra midfielder. And I think he was instrumental in changing the game. And into the second half, I thought a really, really good game. 5 points from play. Super game. And yeah, just it lacked any intensity. You know, I think for Clare, you know, looking, they're going to be playing Cork in the last game. Cork already through to the semi-finals. I'm sure it'll be an opportunity for Cork to have a look down the well, you know, give maybe younger young guys another chance, or so Pat Ryan can kind of experiment a bit. So they're not really going to get a challenge as such into a 5-week break then before the championship. So I think if you look at Clare's games to date, like, have they got a challenge from any game really as such? You know, look, Brian Lohan is in his 4th year. He knows his team, but, you know, they haven't been tested, I suppose. You know, I suppose that's why you would have question marks going into the championship. But I'm sure Lohan knows what he's doing. He knows his guys. We've mentioned this all through the league. You don't know what kind of training they're doing at the minute. As I said, to see, like, Tony Kelly, had he one shot on target? You know, and, you know, it's just on Tony Kelly, like. So look, Clare, I wouldn't panic. I think for Galway, they finished up the game really strong, outscoring Clare 197, and they'll take the bit and move on. And again, I don't think Galway can progress to the semi-finals. So regardless, if Westmeath, they're playing Westmeath on a Sunday. So, you know, again, Galway will have a 5-week break to contend with before welcoming Wexford to Salt Hill. So, you know, I said there was errors both sides, but I suppose the thing is there is time to fix it. You know, 5 weeks is probably the perfect break now for teams to get set and ready for championship.
Right.
I was just saying, I don't know what kind of video work Clare do, but there should be like tape of just kind of even decision making, like a couple of times where a backman looked across the pitch to, you know, 2 loose players or what team, and they went for the harder pass. Do you get me? Where the player who was under a bit more pressure, if he dropped it, just small things like that you're kind of, you'd love to show back the tape and say, what were you thinking here at this moment? Just small things like that. So there is loads for him to work on going forward. Yeah, but that's the big thing. Like even for your whole team, if your full back line are jittery on the ball, and in the way hurling is now, like with possession being so vital, you just need players comfortable on the ball and comfortable controlling the ball. And when that's lacking, it just leads to an uneasiness through the whole team. So I think like Shane O'Donnell as well, like hasn't featured at all in the league, and as far as I know, there's no injury. Last year, he was kind of rested for most of the league, and it worked well, and that he had a brilliant championship. So I wonder, is Lohan kind of thinking the same scenario, or is it work? I don't know what the situation is, but again, I'd prefer him to get a game or two. I don't know, just for the forwards to even knit together for a game. Maybe he'll feature against Cork, but as Kieran said, Cork are under no pressure to deliver a performance now. You'd be looking for 1 or 2 intense challenge games now instead, is what they'll be looking for to, try and get the championship team bedded in a bit. Another interesting one was Davy Mack wasn't named in the squad at all, and another lad with no injury. And there was just kind of rumours maybe of a disagreement there going around. I'm not sure, but look, hopefully that isn't the case. And maybe guys of that vintage are just being given like certain games to rest up, and I hope that's the case. So look, I think for a Clare point of view as well, Mark Rogers is going to have to be playing championship. Like he is that kind of threat inside that seemed to be lacking. Just especially like I know even Clare put Tony Kelly in there for a while into full forward line when things weren't going well, just to have some sort of maybe a goal threat in there or something. But like that didn't seem to work out. So whereas Mark is an out and out inside man, like, so that's something I think Lohan will definitely have to work at. Galway impressive enough though, striking really good. Like they can take scores from range. Like you're looking at Monaghan, Cooney out midfield then as well. Glennon just able to take points from distance, which is comfortably which is huge. And modern hurling, very hard to see Wexford going up to Salthill beating them first round.
Yeah, because I mean Galway, I have notes here. The meshing of two attacking styles. I think you can see Shefflin likes the direct ball, but he's looking to run through the lines as well. And I thought that was fairly evident probably in the second and third quarter of the game. And have Galway kind of settled on a half back here in Dahi Burke and Gerard McInerney at 3, because it certainly looked that Dahi Burke was more advanced, and with his club in Turrickmore, he hits those points for fun in county championship games. So I think we're seeing a new side to Dahi Burke inter-county wise, and I think could be a nice lock here for Galway in centre half back, Kieran.
Yeah, he was really impressive. One big point at one stage of the game. Dahi Burke is an outstanding hurler, and I know these guys have been switched around in the past as well, so it's not completely alien to him. Yeah, I think wherever you play Dahi Burke, he'll give it all for you, and I think he probably has maybe more legs than what McInerney might have to offer. Yeah, it could work to the advantage this year, I think.
Exactly, because you do have Joseph Cooney there, who's versatile enough. He can go in, wing forward. He can also operate in the half back line as well. So I think overall the Galway locals here have been relatively happy with that performance. Maybe not for the first 20 minutes per se, but getting a win down in Ennis, I think they feel that that's probably league achieved in terms of Westmeath. No disrespect, maybe kind of just, a routine exercise. But I think from a Clare perspective here, Rory, like 4 points coming off the bench, probably one of the positives that Brian Lohan can probably take from the game here, surely.
Yeah, Robin Mounsey got a great score, running up the sideline after he came in. Didn't really do much after that. Ian Galvin looked very sharp inside when he came on, and for the first time, really started very well in the first half in there and caused big problems for the full back line. And probably for the first time since then, because Galway got to grips with him soon after that. But Ian Galvin's a different, probably a different type of forward, for even though he's kind of small in stature, he just plays the game a bit differently. He's moving left and right, and he caused problems when he came in. So that was, like Clare have a lot of these type of players inside as well. Like you've Shane Meehan as well to come back, who's coming back from another serious enough injury. So who's meant to be back doing some training at the minute. So should be there for selection for championship. So like Lohan probably is going to go in form here with some of these lads who's gone well in training, because there isn't much between them, and just needs to get that balance right, I think, as well in the half forward line, because like David Fitzgerald, got 4 or 5 points, but got them really deep, like coming back, as we saw, picking up puck, getting puck outs like loose and running forward and striking them over. But I just thought in general play our half forward line were, they were definitely well beaten, and at the other end our half back line were well beaten as well. I know there was a couple of debutants there. You had Keane Galvin starting at wing back. It was a difficult game for him to start, because he was under pressure, I thought, from the off in it. I suppose, look, there is no need to panic. 5-6 weeks out, and I think Lohan would be fairly sure of 13 of his championship team, more or less. And Shane O'Donnell back in would give a boost to the half forward line. So look, that we mentioned it actually in the last podcast, that Clare Tipperary match, first round of the league in Ennis, or first round of the round robin, is going to be absolutely huge. And I would say Clare win that. Like Tip are going to be in trouble to qualify, good and all as they look at the minute. Same thing, Clare lose that game, and they're the ones that are going to be under pressure, having to face Limerick, Cork, and then Davies, Waterford then as well. So yeah, it's a huge game for a round one game.
Yeah, it's pretty mouth-watering really, isn't it, Rory and Kieran? But congratulations to Galway anyway. And I suppose, Kieran, Wexford gave a reaction after that round 3 demolition from Clare in Chadwick's Park, but ultimately no points to account for them. Cork winning by 2 points, but I suppose some hopeful signs for Wexford here.
Yeah, I think it was another strange game, as well as the Clare Galway game. Like Cork only led once, and that was the 72nd minute from Boateng's goal. I think from Wexford, looking at the Clare game, they were such a shambles at the back. They held Cork scoreless for the first 20 minutes. Chin coming back in. I think one area that Wexford were struggling with early in the league was puckouts. They were going short, and we saw all sorts of trouble they got into against Clare. But I think having Chin back in centre forward, he offers you a target. He won 7 from 9 puckouts in the first half. They went down on top of him, which it shows how important it is to have him there, and it gives him that option to go long, which they didn't have, I think, up to now. But I think the game probably came with a bit of cost. A couple of injuries picked up. Conor McDonald, Damien Reck, Lingo McGovern, and Matthew Hanlon. And actually, I think from what I'm hearing, the word of Matthew Hanlon, he could be out for a little while. I think Matthew Hanlon, he's hot and cold sometimes, but he did offer a bit of experience back there, and he kind of settled the full back line when he was there. Look, I think it was evident enough that Darragh Egan was kind of maybe facing a bit of pressure, and I think that's why Chin was named on the bench, and he started. Dee O'Keefe actually went off as well, I think. But I think Dee O'Keefe had a great game. He went back as an extra man, and he mopped up the world of ball on his own 21. I think for Wexford as well, there's still a lot of improvements. Shooting in front of goal, I think was one. They had 31 shots a goal, only scoring 18. So it's been an issue all along for me in the league. I think further improvement is needed. But I think Cork didn't look like the Cork we've seen the last few games. Only had 23 shots a goal. They didn't have the same zip about them. They looked like a team that had trained that morning. Harnedy came in. I thought Harnedy did very well come in. I think he kind of created 3 or 4 points. And it's kind of all Cork's running, and it was 2 long balls in. It's where the goals came from, which is kind of strange. We haven't seen that from Cork, but I suppose it just shows it can still be a viable option for goals, long ball in top and wait for a breaking ball. But yeah, look, I think for Wexford, the performance more so will ease the pressure on Darragh Egan. Obviously, they picked up a few injuries, and there'll be a sweat on a few of them lads. They're facing into Limerick this weekend. Obviously, won't be an easy task. So, but I think the performance will have bought a little bit of a bit of time for Egan, and there's still a lot of first team players come back in. We still haven't seen Rory O'Connor. I think when we get the starting 15 on the team, there'll be a different team to what we've seen in the league so far. I do think they will be ready for championship. I can see them coming out of Leinster. I think it'll potentially be between Dublin and Wexford, and based on performances at the minute, you'd have to take it into fact that they've played with a weaker team. I think once starting 15 are back, I think you'd have to fancy Wexford to take the third spot from Leinster.
Yeah, Rory, get you in there. What was your reaction to that Cork performance?
Yeah, look, it was sloppy from Cork, and Wexford probably should have got out of there with a win. They had every chance of doing so. Look, it can happen in games where everyone had seen what had happened the week before down in Wexford Park there with Clare's big win, and probably players themselves are thinking, this game isn't going to push us too much, and suddenly then Wexford are coming out with a huge performance, and it is hard to lift yourself during a game when you're kind of caught by a team that's playing with a bit more intensity than you, and it's hard to readjust things on the pitch that way. And in fairness to Wexford, it was great to see that fight, because we think back last year, when performances of the championship was Wexford beating Kilkenny in Nolan Park, and they have that in them. And I think the Leinster Championship needs Wexford strong this year. And as Kieran alluded to, Egan isn't having much luck with injuries either. And even the way the games are falling for them, you're looking at maybe building on that performance. They have to go up to the Gaelic grounds now next week and play Limerick away. And if Limerick are on song and go strong here, because as well, Burns is back and Gillan is back, and championship is looming for Limerick as well. And it depends what way Limerick approach it with a league semi-final on the horizon as well. But if Limerick goes strong and Wexford are down those players, they could get another big beating like the one from 2 weeks ago, and that would be a pity after the promise they've showed in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. So yeah, look, you're just hoping that Wexford can build on this now and put up a real competitive performance against Limerick, because they need to kind of put that big defeat from 2 weeks ago behind them and start putting a couple of big performances together.
I think from, let's say, Cork perspective, I think resiliency was used once or twice by a few of the coaches after the game. And I mean, they were down 6 points in the first half and also in the second half. And I mean, I suppose the newcomer, Power at full forward, he did score 1-1. He won 2 frees as well that were put over as well. So maybe a positive. Bozang as well. and O'Connor came off the bench to score 1-1. So I think from a Cork perspective, never gave up on the game and got their rewards at the end. But I suppose Wexford here, Kieran, you mentioned about the attacking potency here, but I thought right at the end, particularly with Jack O'Connor's chance and then Lee Chin then sending the 65 wide, I thought that was a significant turning point in the game, really, for a momentum changing, those two kind of moments here, kind of a 4-point swing there.
Yeah, and I think, and this isn't the first year this issue as there was. I think Chin has worked very hard to where he is now at free taking and hitting dead balls. I don't think by any means he's a natural free taker. He's worked to get to where he is, but you don't have the same. If you see Galan send over a ball, or Patrick Horgan or TJ Reid, you're nearly putting on the scoreboard already and they're standing over. You just don't have that same confidence in Chin. I think, look, some days when he's on, but he has the days where, maybe the simple free is missed. And as you say, it could be a case of a swing of momentum, or, even that one extra point can be, go in your favour so much. But I think it's one thing it's lacking, and I think it's one thing that Wexford may be lacking, is just a real consistent and natural free taker. Ross Benville is highly rated as a free taker. He's got a few games this year. I don't know where he'll stand in plans for championship, but I suppose it's an issue that's been ongoing for Wexford for a couple of years now.
Yeah, but again, maybe some optimism for Wexford, but I suppose at what cost in terms of the injuries you've outlined there, Kieran. But being Cork 4-4 into the semi-final, can travel to Clare, probably looking to rotate the squad a little bit ahead of that semi-final in the league. So look, another close game, maybe unexpected to some, but it's good to see Wexford on the way back. I suppose if we want to kind of close out 1A, Limerick travelled to Cusack Park in Mullingar. Big Limerick contingent went to the game, and pretty routine win here, Kieran, for Limerick, 127 to 115, and a few of the prospects impressed along the way.
I suppose Limerick started well against the wind. 4 points to 1 up when Boylan found the net, 12 minutes, and it could have been the second goal soon after as well. Jamie Flanagan could have scored. But I think it was a spirited enough Westmeath performance too, without Killian Doyle, who is their talisman as such. And I think they had probably a lot of waste chances, especially in the first half. But Jack Gillen was unsuccessful on a few occasions, only scoring one, and 114 to 5 points. Westmeath they battled hard, but I think for Limerick, and it's no disrespect to Westmeath and any teams that have played them this year, teams have been rotating number, that you can really experiment with playing them, and it's, I suppose, for I think Tom Marcy had a good game again, and he's had a few this year. Donegal Daly as well, 5 points from play, great performance. But I suppose while these are positives and pluses, you question how much pressure were they under for taking these 5 points. So while it's good, there is probably still question marks over it. I suppose for Limerick, it's good to see earlier the year and All-Star back on the field, as I said, Gillan coming back on in the 63rd minute, getting a lovely finish for a point as well. So yeah, look, again, some good performances, personal performances in the team. Roll into next weekend against Wexford. I suppose I expect more rotation. I think just a draw will see us through to a league semi-final along with Cork. So job done, and move on.
Absolutely. And I mean, from a Westmeath perspective, no Killian Doyle. Only 7 points from play really tells the tale of the tape as well, doesn't it? From a Westmeath perspective, they found scores very hard to come by from open play. We're a very competitive second half, but I suppose we'll get to 1B in a while with Laois's loss in Antrim. I suppose that relegation final does loom large now for Westmeath. I suppose Ruairi, Nolan Park, Kilkenny entertained Dublin. Pretty one-sided affair there.
Yeah, look, and worrying, because every time you kind of wonder whereabouts Dublin are, but that's like a couple of games now where against Tipperary and against Kilkenny where they have just looked, a level behind these teams. And it's, again, as Kieran said earlier, you can't see anyone but Galway and Kilkenny going through, so it's going to be between Dublin and Wexford. At the minute, neither team fills you with confidence that they're any bit ahead of the other. I think Wexford with a full team are going to be ahead of Dublin, but that's the question: will they have a full team there? And we mentioned this before, you shut down Donald Burke, and who else is going to step up in the Dublin forward line at the minute? So yeah, it is worrying for Dublin, and I presume as well, it would be, we talk about teams targeting certain games in the league. you think playing away against Kilkenny down in Nolan Park, that that would be a game that you would be definitely targeting if you're Dublin management, to see where players stand. And the fact that it wasn't really a competitive game says a lot about maybe where Dublin are going into the championship.
Yeah, Kieran, get you in there. That was a very strong first half performance from Kilkenny. Kind of put the game to bed. I mean, 17 points from 17 shots kind of told its story. Now, you could maybe debate in terms of Dublin's defensive pressure not being what it was, but still a very impressive opening period for Kilkenny, with Billy Drennan really leading the line very well.
Yeah, and I think Kilkenny looks in control from start to finish, and you'd even question were they first or second gear. They were just coasting. Billy Drennan, I think he's, for a young guy, he's really stepped up this year. I think Ling has given him plenty of experience as well. He's played every game to date, and I suppose getting him as much experience as he can. But 9 first half points, 13 overall. He's not disappointing, and it's hard to see any flaws in his game at the minute. I think the 2 own Cody goals then just sealing the win. But 100% shot actually in the first half, which is kind of unheard of these days. Kilkenny won 21 of their 28 puckouts, which is a good old stat. And I think as well, Pádraig Walsh, cornerback, I think we mentioned there the last few weeks about how versatile he is, and again another position, and to see will they kind of play him in a Barry Nash kind of role. You'd have the hurling for it. I suppose they're still trying to settle on their own 15. Kilkenny still have TJ Reid and Adrian Mullen to come back in, which will add another point of attack. Really impressed with Kilkenny. Okay, we question the opposition. I think we look at Dublin. Last year, Dublin kind of impressed in the league, but we saw a pattern emerge that was the same. 12 or 13 players take to the field. I think it's kind of a similar occurrence this year. I think Donald Burke has played every game. He's heavily relied on, and he limped off injured the last day, and I suppose we didn't know how long he was out, but it wasn't that long in the end. But you just fear if anything happened to Donald Burke in championship, where the scores are going to come from for Dublin. Really rely on, some teams rely on forward. I think Tip rely on forward, but not to the same extent. There's quality forwards around forward as well, but for Dublin, you really would worry if Donald Burke doesn't take to the field. I think for Kilkenny, they'll march on, and I think they'll really fancy their chances against Waterford, which is kind of nearly a shootout semi-final spot. And Kilkenny always regarded the league highly, and I'm sure they'll have full intentions of trying to make that league semi-final spot as well.
I think Derek Ling was emphasising that post-game, just in terms of the league and traditional values that Kilkenny hold on the league. So they'll be going all out for that victory against Waterford on Sunday. I thought 2 other aspects on that Kilkenny performance. I thought the attacking style, I thought they varied it quite well. Again, the direct ball was used at various times to good effect, but also running it from deep here as well. And they didn't seem to miss a beat, particularly when Owen Murphy went off with that head injury. Paddy Deegan as well at centre half forward. That's maybe kind of an interesting kind of positional switch here. Maybe Kilkenny will adopt in the championship as well here, Ruairi. And I mean, Pádraig Walsh last year certainly was deployed in the 40 for Kilkenny's. But I suppose, do you see Paddy Deegan kind of slotting in there in that wing forward position come championship?
Yeah, well, Paddy Deegan does play in Half Ireland for the club. So, he has experience there, and it was probably worth looking at as well from a Kilkenny point of view. If you were going to drop Pádraig Walsh back into the back line, just getting a guy with a bit of experience in there, because there are young lads coming through. Billy Drennan again, 13 points, 5 from play. And look, I suppose if you take out Billy Drennan's scores, they were still getting scores from Owen Cody 2, Deegan 3 points himself, Donnelly 1 point, and Billy Ryan 2 points. Whereas take out Donald Burke's scores, he had 4 from play along with his frees, and you had 5 points from the whole rest of the Dublin forward line, and that is the huge worry for them. If somebody else is popping up scoring 4 or 5 points a game consistently, or 1-3 or something a match, you would give them some hope in it. But Kilkenny again tipping along nicely. Again, could be an interesting game. You'd wonder would Davy value maybe getting a run out in Thurles, because that's where they're going to be playing their home league championship games. Just getting a game that could be seen as a dry run of the match. So are Waterford going to go strong in Nolan Park? I reckon they probably will as well. So we could have it's the one game really left that's competitive in the final round, because there's going to be a lot of dead rubbers, and let's hope that both teams kind of go at it. I know you're saying how high Kilkenny value the league, and during the Cody era, they had no problem winning league and championship. People are talking about the league, winning the league being a negative, but it was never a negative for Cody. I know there was a bigger gap at times, but still, winning leads to more, success. And we heard that from the Limerick camp as well this week, where Tom Morrissey was basically saying at this stage now he'd love to win another league medal. The more medals these players know as well, like their careers can be quite short, so the more medals you can put on the medals board at home up above the mantelpiece with awards and that, like they're mad to win every game they go out in. So yeah, look, I'm hoping that game will be the cracking game, and again Waterford will turn up for the same intense that they showed in Thurles last week.
Again, Kilkenny humming along quite nicely. I think Dublin do have a few issues. I think even the skill set issue from Dublin, particularly their passing, distribution, just wasn't good enough. I think Miall O'Donoghue has a big job in his hands there with Dublin heading into the championship.
I think as well, Mark, just one point in Dublin as well there, tension Lisbon. I suppose it kind of shows maybe how much pressure they're on against Kilkenny, but 8 yellow cards and 1 red card in the game, I suppose it highlights the pressure they're under. But also, Roland Hayes showed a lot of promise last year. I think he's injured, but I think if he can come back into that team, he would add another dimension for Dublin along with Burke. I think we really need to get him in there as well, because as we said, if Burke doesn't take to the field, you'd really, really worry for Dublin.
Yeah, you certainly would. Like, I know there was cameos there from Crummy, particularly into the goal. Constantine chipped in with a few points, but again, it was very sporadic during the game. So yeah, Ronan Hayes probably close to fitness, I would say, within the Dublin camp. So, but I think there's plenty of scope for improvement here for Dublin. I know they have Laois in the last game. They'd probably need a morale boost and win here in Parnell Park to finish off the league, then prepare into the Leinster Hurling Championship. I suppose the most critical game of the whole 1A, 1B was in Corrigan Park in Belfast. Antrim securing their Division 1 status with a 318 to 118 win. Massive result for Antrim Hurling. Another year in the top flight.
Yeah, and that's one thing we'd questioned Antrim in the past. They had often showed these really strong performances against the stronger counties, to put it that way. They're the teams that would be vying for Lee McCarthy honours, and they have been very competitive against them, only to get turned over then by a Laois or a Westmeath or somebody. So it was good that they actually followed through this year and won the game that they really had to win, to get themselves safe in the division after being competitive in earlier games. So that's a positive sign for Antrim. And look, by all accounts, they made tougher work of the game. Like they should have been further ahead at times and kind of left Laois in there. So they still needed a strong finish to kind of see off the game, which they did. Again, Laois have to be credited as well. Got up to Corrigan Park after the beatings they had shipped so far in the championship to put up a really strong performance and run Antrim down to the last few minutes of the game. Look, I suppose that's probably a plus for Laois going in a couple of weeks' time against Westmeath, that Laois have had a kind of closer, tougher game against a team, closer to their level, whereas Westmeath haven't been afforded that opportunity at their side yet. Look, again, that'll be a crucial game coming up, but this was Antrim's big match, and they got the win that they needed. So yeah, it just does give them a bit of a boost going into championship as well now, and with one match to play, like at home to Tip, they have a free shot at Tipperary now as well. A Tip team that are already through, and it'll be another huge boost for Antrim. Can they, get another win and 2 wins on the board even for the league?
Absolutely. Kieran, I suppose from a Laois perspective, probably plenty of positives in that first half. They put Antrim under the pump here, and I think that Neil McManus goal just before half time was really a turning point in the game. Laois doing all the hurling, only were up heading into the sheds 2 points up, and I mean Antrim really got buoyed by that. But again, there was plenty of resiliency here from Laois on the day.
Yeah, and I think the only stat that went against them was the scoreboard. I think they were in full control in the first half, played with a strong breeze. I suppose we have to note, and I think Roland was putting the ball deep into the Antrim half, and I think they were 6 and 7 at times, and had Antrim in all sorts of bother. But I think when started the second half, Antrim up the ante, and I think when the assisted they went to business, and I think when Cunning slotted his goal on the 52nd minute, I think that's when Antrim took control. But I suppose, look, you have to commend Laois. They battled till the end, and Antrim held on with a few late scores just to see it out. But I know Laois had a red card at the dying moments as well. But I think from the league so far, I think Antrim were the better team. They put in better performances, especially against Dublin and Kilkenny. Obviously, no wins to date, but I suppose if you look at performance, they were up there, and they're making. It's a hard place to go and win now. We know like Clare, and they pride themselves on And Ennis being a fortress and a hard place to go and win, I think, Antrim could say the same. It's a hard place to go and get a result. I think it's deserved, as Ruairi mentioned, in years gone by, they'll take a big scalp and lose the game. They should win, but, Derek Leeson is making progress, and I think for Antrim, I think they deserve it this year.
Yeah, I think so. On the balance of the league so far, I think probably the right result, I think, in terms of Antrim, their development under Derek Gleeson as well. Bill Maher is only 1 year into his term with Laois, so you hope that Laois can kind of bounce back from this, and they've shown positive signs. But I suppose Cathal Gunning, 110 from Antrim. There was cameos from Neil McManus, Maskey. I thought Burke as well in cornerback for Antrim led by example, particularly in that third quarter when the game was in the melting pot. And also Neil and Keelan Malloy chipped in with 2 points as well from play. So congratulations to Antrim. I suppose Laois have Westmeath really kind of focused now on the relegation final. That'll be a huge game in a few weeks. I suppose, guys, can we turn our attention to 2A? And I suppose the results here, Offaly had 7 points to spare over Carlow, but probably doesn't tell the tale of the tape on that performance. Kildare, probably the most improved hurling team development-wise in the last 2-3 years. Probably pulling off the keynote victory here, 5-point win over Kerry. And then we had a draw between Derry and Down. But I suppose starting with Offaly and Carlow here, Ruairi. Offaly winning by 7 points, but really doesn't tell the tale of the tape due to maybe inaccuracies from Carlow, both with place balls, but also their discipline as well, letting them down.
Yeah, a couple of red cards for Carlow in a game, when you're away from home, like, that's not something that you can afford to as well. And by all accounts, free taking became an issue for them. Marty Kavanagh, who's usually very sound on frees, had an off day with them, and they still ended up in a situation where they were a goal down only coming in into the second half, and just kind of fell away. Then, like, when you're 13 against, away from home, it's going to be tough. But look, Carlow started the league with a heavy defeat against Kildare, wasn't it, at home?
Yeah.
And they've definitely improved. They went down to Kerry, could have won the game below. So they have improved over the league, and are probably, maybe on the up going into Joe McDonough, but it's at the same time, it does look like they have slipped in the pecking order. Offaly, Kerry, also Kildare now as well, gone ahead of them. So, at the same time, probably wouldn't be beyond them putting up a couple of shocks in the Joe McDonough Championship. Like, they're not that far off it. But look, again, I think the story here now is Kildare again at the weekend. Another win for them. It's going to be a showdown with Offaly. Offaly did what they had to do. I suppose we can't fault them. It wasn't their fault that Carlow went down to 13. So they got the job done, got the win under their belts, and even if their performance wasn't what they'd be expecting, but it does set them up now with what should be, a grandstand game to see who qualifies automatically for a semi-final, or for the final, isn't it? Winner goes through to the final now out of this game. So it's effectively a league semi-final.
Exactly. I suppose Kieran gets you in there in terms of even Kildare. That was a pretty keynote fixture, kind of leading into it. An awful lot of media hype in Kildare hurling circles on that Kerry visit, and they duly performed extremely well. Scored the last 7 points of the first half to go 14-6 up, and then 2 super goals from Brian Byrne and Jerry Deegan as well, really sealing this game well before full time. James Burke with 12 points. Again, Kildare, the progression in the hurling grades in the last few years has been phenomenal, and I imagine they'll go to Tullamore with full confidence given that performance from Offaly last weekend.
Yeah, they're a team on a high. I suppose, look, you have to give some credit to Kerry. Like, they went into half time 8 points down, and they did bring it back to 4. But I think that Brian Byrne goal really rocked them, and that was soon followed by the Jerry Keegan goal. And I think Kildare eased the victory at that stage. But like Kildare, like, they're a team playing with confidence. They're now 14 games unbeaten in all competitions, which is a very impressive stat. And I think they'll look at the Offaly game against Carlow. They'll really fancy themselves against Offaly, even though it's on in Tullamore. I think Offaly probably were lucky. I think even add to Carlow's woes, I think, to the first half goal chance as well. So add that to the miss wide, or to the wides from frees and the 2 reds, and I think it could have been a different game. I think Offaly, they're probably reliant as well on Owen Cahill for a lot of their scores, which it probably raised a question mark if he wasn't there, with the struggle. But I'd really, really fancy going into it. Like, it is like a knockout game. I would fancy Kildare. I suppose it's 14 games unbeaten. They're not going to end that stat anytime soon, and I think they've been the farm team of the bunch this year so far. They're a big physical team, young team, and I think fair play to Herity. He's really brought them on to another level in the last couple of months, especially. But in the last few years, they've been building slowly there, and I suppose they're starting to see reap the rewards of it now. But I think Carlow would be kind of gutted because they're sitting on 2 points, but a win over Offaly, they would have been on 4 points. They would have been in line for to progress to a possible final. So I think they'd be kind of gutted with that performance.
And I think Carlow, they're out of the promotion reckoning here, but there could be an outside chance that they get relegated here. So this Sunday's fixture is going to be pretty important for them, playing Derry. Which Derry is showing a bit of good upturn in form, particularly against Down. There seemed to be a controversial last-minute free for Down as well to secure a draw there in that match against Derry. So no give-me's for Carlow. And this disciplinary issue for Carlow reared its head again last weekend. I suppose going back to Offaly as well, Owen Cahill and also Mitchell's contributing 15 points of 119. That'll give an awful lot of optimism here for Kildare heading to Tullamore, given that stat alone. So I think that'll be interesting. I suppose, guys, can we get a few predictions from me? 1A, 1B, and 2A. I suppose 1A, Limerick, Wexford, Clare, Cork, and Galway, Westmeath. I suppose, how do you fancy those teams going? Rory, start with you.
Yeah, I go Limerick there at home. As Kieran said, like Wexford coming up with injuries after throwing everything into the Cork game and not getting the result they wanted. It's going to be hard to pick themselves up. Limerick are in no pressure situation with players now playing for places, and there will be a bit of rotation from Kylie's point of view, and that's the dangerous thing in a way, because the guys coming in have to impress. So, even trying, some of these guys are just trying to make a championship 24, and this is their chance, or 26, I should say. This is their chance to get their names into the match day squad for championship, is by putting consistent performances in now. So you'd have to go with Limerick there. Clare against Cork, I presume Cork are already through. Clare are out, but you'd imagine just home advantage, and maybe after the disappointments of last week, some of the Clare lads will have to have a point to prove. Like no more so than even some of the bigger names like Tony Kelly himself, to go out and put in a big performance now, in front of a home crowd. So, you'll be going with Clare in that one. And look, it's hard to see Westmeath, getting anything close here. I know last week they'd be happy enough. Like I'm sure they had their own targets against Limerick, that they were within that points total of a target. But with Galway coming on tennis and winning, it's going to be a tough one for Westmeath.
Sure. Kieran, get your tips for the weekend in 1A.
I think, the Limerick Wexford game, I'm going to go Limerick. I suppose we're in the fortunate position that, as Rory pointed out, we've competition for places, and I suppose now is the time coming towards a semi-final or maybe potential league final the players want to play. I think especially in the forward line, we have a lot of players putting their hand up, young guys. I think we will see rotation. I think Wexford, obviously, there's going to be a lot of lads needing a treatment table. Once this game is done and dusted for them, they'll have 5 weeks to Salt Hill and Galway, and they'll want to get everyone fit and ready. So I expect Limerick, they'll continue on the form we've had for the last few games, and I expect Limerick to win that one. A couple of points is fair. Westmeath, Galway, regardless what team Galway put out, I think they're also out. They can't progress. So, we'll see an experimental Galway team there, which will have enough for Westmeath. And, Clare and Cork, similar. I think these 3 games are probably going to be, I don't think there are really going to be any hot and spicy affairs in it. Cork already through, so they have the luxury of experimenting. And I do agree, I think Clare will, especially at home, they won't want to lose 2 games at home on the trot. There will be performances wanted from players and as a team as well, because, this is going to be the last game for on lights or on camera for 5 weeks. I'm sure there'll be challenge games, but as I said, they're not going to lose again at home. So I go Clare against Cork. I
suppose 1B then, guys. Antrim entertaining Tipperary and Corrigan Park. Dublin versus Leitrim Parnell Park, and Waterford playing Kilkenny and Nolan Park. I suppose, Rory, your tips for round 5 and 1B?
Okay, I suppose you're looking at Tipperary, even though they are going to have a chance to experiment that with momentum and everything, they're going to be tough to beat. Look, here's one as well. Like, if you remember Antrim now, they've won the game. They've a home game to finish. As I mentioned earlier, they can have a right cut at Tipperary. And this could be like, maybe, usually they take a big scalp. This is potentially that scalp. I see it being quite close. Maybe if Tip are to win, it'd be something like just 2-3 points, or 1-2-3 points. I don't see it being a blowout or anything like that. Another potential shock here could be Laois against Dublin. Last year in the championship, they ran them really close to, was it to a point in Parnell Park? So Laois are right in there. In terms of belief, they've beaten Dublin in the past in championship as well. Had their probably strongest performance at the weekend against Antrim, and it'd be good if, for a Laois point of view, if they could follow it up with a big one in Parnell Park. Dublin probably still have enough, but again, a lot tighter than we might have thought a couple of weeks ago, I think, with the way both teams are going at the minute. And then the last game then, Kilkenny-Waterford, probably to tie it around, and hopefully this is the one game that will, excite us over the weekend, with the other 5 being kind of, nothing to play for in those games. So again, Kilkenny, Nolan Park, you're probably going to give them the nod. Yeah, hopefully, as I said, it'll be a rip-roaring game. But again, it's going to be hard to see Waterford going up there beating Kilkenny in Nolan Park after putting a lot into the Tip game last week.
I suppose, lads, 2A, that looks spicy enough. I mean, O'Connor Park, Tullamore, Offaly entertaining Kildare, Austin Stack Park, Kerry hosting Down, and then you had Carlow versus Derry, which looks like a relegation 6-pointer if there ever was one. I suppose Tips there on 2A, who will come out victorious. Kieran?
Yeah, I think going to Kildare Offaly game. I think Kildare haven't put a foot wrong really so far. Offaly, as we say, even looking at the previous game against Carlow, I could be pointed out to Carlow possibly had it in their power to win, but I think Kildare unbeaten in so many games, and I think they have been the team of 2A for me. So I predict Kildare to win in Tullamore. Kerry and Down, I think Kerry will be disappointed especially at their game last week against Kildare. And I think a couple of games this year, the pressure's on Kerry this year. Steve Mumphy, they've been close a few times in the last few years, and I expect they will get the job done against Down. And same for Carlow. I think they get the job done at home to Derry as well. So Kerry, not all is lost for Kerry. Obviously, they'll be in a playoff for final, but I think Kildare, Kerry, Carlow.
Yeah, because I think Kerry is going to be an interesting side note. If they're to win this game against Down, get into the semi-final, they get into the final, they could be playing 7 consecutive weekends with the Joe McDonagh Cup if they got to an All-Ireland hurling final. So, I mean, that could be an interesting watch for Kerry, certainly. Steve Mumphy kind of mentioned that he trusts the squad, but I mean, that's going to be a hectic schedule for anyone. I think the Offaly Kildare games probably stand out there, and I would go for Kildare just based on their scoring distribution at the moment. And I think that'd be a lovely tonic for hurling as well if we could get Kildare in a final and maybe getting promoted here as well, because the amount of work that's going on in underage, I think Kildare hurling circles has been phenomenal. Same with Offaly as well. So I think that'll be a cracker. And then Carlow Derry, I think this will be more competitive than people think. I think Carlow have to really have their wits about them in this one. I think Carlow by 2 or 3 points, but again, if Carlow were to lose this one, Derry jump out of the relegation zone and Carlow would go into 2B. So I think there's an awful lot of to lose in that watch Cullen Park. So I'll give the vote to Carlow. I suppose, guys, before we go, Croke Cup final is in Croke Park on St. Patrick's Day at 3 p.m. You have the Juggernauts in Kieran's College facing Presentation Athenry. I suppose, guys, looking forward to the game. What are the main talking points for you in the final, Ruairi?
I think it's since 1994 is since Galway College have won the Croke Cup, which was Loughrea back then, Greyfields Loughrea. So it'll be a huge achievement. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Mark, being a local above, but I think
it's been a while. I think you're spot on.
They have been in a couple of finals themselves just a few years ago, wasn't it? They made a couple of finals, but it'll be huge for a Galway team to win. Now Galway are having underage success without winning All Ireland colleges, secondary school level All Ireland. So, but still, it is a boost if it were to happen. And with Nyland there, they have this a serious threat up front. We saw what he could do last year in the minor championship against Tipperary there, especially inside the Gaelic grounds. So a player of serious talent, and in a pitch like Croke Park, it's going to be hard to shut down a player like that with their space everywhere. Kieran's have they have the pedigree in this competition, and we mentioned this before the semi-finals that where a team like Cashel were going up for the first time into an All-Ireland semi-final, a bit like Tulla the year before. Just for Kieran's, it's expected for them, and there isn't that whole fanfare or rigmarole about getting there because they're so used to it. So that is a factor. But still, you never know. Playing at Croke Park can bring out nerves in any player, like especially, guys at their age. So I wouldn't rule out Athenry at all. It's just going to be hard to see. But you never know. Maybe the fact that Kieran will have the favourite tag heavily might suit them. They're going in there with a free shot. And as we said, they do have firepower up front in the form of Nyland to, that one player alone can do some serious damage if he gets, quality of service inside him.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think St. Kieran's coming into this. They had a good Leinster Schools campaign. They lost to the Offaly school selection in the final. No disgrace there, given Ronan Screeney's performance in the final was absolutely outstanding. They did rebound very well, beat St. Raphael's College of Loughrea very convincingly in a quarter-final, then faced a very strong physical Cashel Community School, who did rattle a few early scores against St. Kieran's, but I think the composure of St. Kieran's and their opportunistic goals at vital times during that game saw them through. I suppose the likes of Aaron McAvoy, Harry Shine, Niall Shorthall, Killian Corcoran, Killian Doyle's already in the Kilkenny senior hurling panel, extended panel, so Donna Murphy as well. So I mean, Presentation Athenry know what they're facing here. They all have to produce a massive performance. Aaron Nyland, Tiernan, Lynn as well. Again, they've come through a pretty tough semi-final against third CBS. I think it's just a scoring distribution here for Athenry. Kind of does concern me a little bit here, Kieran. Do you see a chance here for Athenry on St. Patrick's Day against St. Kieran's?
It's hard to. I think you look at this is St. Kieran's 8th Croke Cup final in a row. So these guys knows what it's all about. They've won it 23 times in total. I think they've had very good wins in St. Raphael's and Cashel Community School to get them to the final. And they've been building. As each game went on. I don't think it was any disgrace to lose the Leinster final to the Offaly amalgamation team that had the makings of the All-Ireland minor team last year. So I think it'll be against Athenry. Look, they did beat a very good Thurles team in the semi-finals. But look, you can't write off a bit of class, and he's a highly rated Aaron Island, as you mentioned. So, but I do expect that Kieran's will be strong enough on the day. But as you said, finals and the nerves and the big stage and the big day. Who knows what happens, but I think you'd have to say Kieran's will be strong favourites.
Yeah, Rory, would you go along with that?
Yeah, I would. As I said, I'd love to see Athenry win it, but it's hard to see happen. A lot of things have to go right for them, and as you were saying, like Tiernan Lean as well, himself and Ireland seem to be the main scoring men there, and if they're held, they're going to be in trouble. But you never know. As I said, they're in the final. When they finally have a chance, I say Croke Park can do funny things to teams. So to get off to a good start, they've every chance. Look, it's something at 3 o'clock. We used to be sitting down watching the Ireland Club finals, but it's great. I think that Croke Park have kind of filled that gap by putting this game on, live 3 o'clock in Croke Park, and TG Carr as well showing it, which, it'll be that bit of GA that we crave on St. Patrick's Day, middle of the day.
Absolutely, because I think Tiernan Lynn was huge for Athenry down the stretch against Thurles CPS. Hit 4 points from open play, and I think from an Athenry perspective, if they were to see videotape of that Cashel Community School semi-final, particularly the start of the game, particularly with Rowan and Connolly, went up front full forward, scored 1-3, 1-4 fairly quickly in that. So St. Kieran's can be got at, particularly in the full back line, if good supply of ball is in there. But again, it's that scoring juggernaut from St. Kieran's that can beat you in any way through the lines or direct as well. The goal just before halftime in that Cashel Community School game literally killed us as a contest, really. Cashel were in play-up mode, and no better team than St. Kieran's. Just to tack on a few points, keep that margin, and then had a powerful finish. So, look, best of luck to Athenry. Let's hope it's a cracker, guys. I mean, last year's final was absolutely exquisite between Artscoil Reach and St. Kieran's. Went right down to the final play. So, best of luck to both teams. Guys, it's a lengthy one, but I think we have plenty to cover. Many thanks, Rory, Kieran, for your time this evening, contributions, and have a great Paddy's Day.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, Mark.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. If you liked what you heard in this podcast, why not subscribe to the Hawkeye Sidekick podcast on either Amazon, Spotify, YouTube or Twitter platforms. You can also follow me at Hawkeye Sidekick on Facebook and Twitter for the latest sporting opinions, articles and reports.